Welcome back again to the another lesson of rocks and minerals. So in this time we will gonna be, since we are done discussing the igneous rock, we will be talking again about sedimentary rocks. So these are the objectives for this discussion. First one, at the end of the lesson, you should be able to identify and differentiate the types of sedimentary rocks and describe the origin and environment of formation of sedimentary rocks. So I know naman that you have your prior knowledge on what sedimentary rock is. So we're just going to deepen your knowledge about sedimentary rocks and also discuss some of the important facts about sedimentary rocks regarding on its creation or its chemical composition, just like that. So what process do sediments undergo to become sedimentary rocks? Because of course, in order for sedimentary rocks to form, it needs to have this basic component, which are the sediments itself. So how can a certain sediments be created? Okay, so the formation of sedimentary rocks requires pre-existing pre-existing rock, reserve of sediments, and even fossilized living organism. So that means in order for a sedimentary rock to form, it needs to have pre-existing rocks. Tapos dapat meron ding reserve of sediments and then even fossilized living organism. Kasi nga yung mga fossilized living organism way back few years ago, they can be classified as, or they will turn into sedimentary rocks. So these components accumulate on Earth's surface and form sedimentary rocks that exhibit distinctive layering of components. So here are the formation of sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks were formed from organic, mechanical, or chemical sediments. A process called lithification, wherein hardened sediments become sedimentary rocks. So the sand, the silt, and organic material are the components of a lithified soil. In contrast to igneous rock, the heat needed for lithification is less intense. In addition to heat, compaction and cementation also play a role in the process. So one of the basic process for a certain sedimentary rocks to form is lithification, wherein yung mga hardened sediments, they join together and become sedimentary rocks. However, lithification is not possible if walay compaction and cementation. Now, diagenesis is a collective process where sediments are lithified or sediments becomes rock. It has four main parts, which includes compaction, cementation, recrystallization, and chemical changes or oxidation or reduction. So that means before ma-form ang isa ka sedimentary rocks, it needs to undergo these four main processes, which involve compaction, cementation, recrystallization, and chemical changes. So compaction. Now, compaction, as the name implies, compaction is when sediments are smashed together. So, what does it mean? So, in compaction, mga good class, ang mahitabo dira, the sediments are being pushed towards each other, or they are being squeezed together. So, imagine a jar with gumballs in it. If there are lots of spaces in between each gumballs, the number is lesser compared when the gumballs are tightly packed within the jar. As more gumballs are added, spaces are lessened, and it starts to stick with each other and form one whole mass. Sedimentary rocks also form this way. The accumulated sediments starts to be squeezed together as more and more sediments are deposited, and this overlying way increases. So during this process, water present in the sediments is squeezed out. So murag nag-join together, or more siyang nag-squeeze or nag-push towards each other ang mga sediments during compaction. Or in a very appropriate definition, sediments are smashed together. Now, in the cementation, so after sediments have been compacted, cementation occurs. So that means na ay piling of sediments from one layer of sediments to another layer of sediments up until hiusa na jud sila, or mura na siya mag-connect or magsemento na nga lisod na siya i-break. So since most sediments can be found in water molecules are present in between particles. Now, the various dissolved minerals present in the surrounding water will eventually fall out and attach to the sediment's grain. Therefore, cementation acts as glue that binds the particle together. So, in the compaction, ang naitabo lang dito as sediments are smashed together, or they are squeezed out with each other. Now, in the cementation here acts as glue. So, it serves as glue para mag-bind together ang particles. So, mo ni siyang nahitabo. So, after na deposition, so these are the individual mineral grains, and then dili na makaya tungod kay nag-anam na sila kadaghan, so nahitabo nga overburden pressure, or merong pressure na nangyayari kasi nga nag-pile over naman ang mga sediment. Now, cementary, or these are the precipitated from ions, so they bind together these sediments and eventually form a strong or a good kanang foundation for a sedimentary rock. Now, next one is crystallization. So, ions of chlorine, magnesium, potassium, calcium carbonate, sodium, and sulfate are commonly dissolved in seawater. However, others such as silica and phosphorus, which contributes to make up the sedimentary rocks, are only found in trace amount of seawater. These ions will crystallize to form rock after the water evaporates. So, aside class from the commonly dissolved elements in our seawater, so ang mga silica daw and the phosphorus, they also contribute to the formation of sedimentary rocks. So even though trace amounts lang ato makita nila or mga gagmay lang mga amount ato makitaan sa seawater, these ions or katong mga ions na present sa seawater, they will soon crystallize or mag-form siya solid formation or basta ka nang mahimo siyang solid solid object or solid rock which actually binds other sediments forming rock after the water evaporates. That is crystallization. Next one is chemical changes. So biological precipitation of the decayed shells of microorganisms from the carbonate sediments through inorganic processes. Other calcium-rich and bicarbonate-rich chemical sediments are precipitated as calcium carbonate and carbonic acid. However, dili kayo ni siya common. So, usually class, ma-form ang sedimentary rock if mag-combine si compaction and cementation. Tapos, there are also other cases na ma-form ang sedimentary rock through crystallization or a combination of compaction, cementation, and crystallization. So, dili kayo common ang chemical changes. So, the remains of plants and animals are also common in sedimentary rocks since environment of their formation is near the Earth's surface. So, that is why many of the archaeologists who are interested or anthropologists who are interested on the early existence of living things, so they were able to trace back the fossil fuel or fossilized evidences of the early inhabitants of the earth kasi nga yung living things or the bodies of these living things became part of a sedimentary rock. So, kaya yung mga dinosaurs na nakikita natin sa mga museum, yung mga artifacts, so they form on sedimentary rocks or they can be included as classifications of sedimentary rocks. So, sedimentary rocks become more recognizable due to the presence of layers or bedding planes which are formed as sediments settle out and are sorted by transporting agents such as wind or water. So we have here the types of sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are classified into clastic or non-clastic. So clastic sedimentary rocks are made up of sediments from pre-existing rocks. So bali ang clastic sedimentary rocks na form siya from pre-existing rocks. So when pre-existing rocks are weathered or break down siya into pieces or into fragments and eroded or they are transported from one place to another, they form sediments which are called clast or detritus, which are composed of individual rocks, individual minerals or rock fragments. When these sediments are transported, deposited, and lithified, they form clastic sedimentary rocks. The components of these rocks are called grains, if they are minerals, and fragments, if they are pieces of rocks. In this type of sediment, mineral composition is secondary to grain size, which means that the sizes of the clast are essential in its naming and identification. When weathering creates clastic sediment, different transporting agents like the wind, flowing water, glaciers, organisms, and gravity carry this sediments because these agents are the one responsible for the erosion or for the transport of sediments from one place to another. So streams carry the largest portion of clastic sediments or yung mga maliliit na mga fragments ng sediments, modifying them as they travel downslope. Okay, ang streams manggod class, so for example kanang mga river, kanang mga paspas muagas na mga river, so they can be called as streams. So if there is a constant flow of water tapos on greater pressure, so that means kadtong mga grains or kadtong mga sediments nga gikan sa na weathered na mga rocks, they can be transported from other place, tapos along the way before siya maabot sa isa ka lugar, muagi pa na siya of different ways wherein it could be nga mo undergo siya or it could be nga makamit siya og mga different challenges along the way. Like for example, mura gud siya from that rough texture nga na weathered, so once it goes with the flow of the streams, since makamit man siya of different obstacles, different types of rocks, so mura siya mabaid or mura siya ma-reshape again, which kanang affects the texture. So it could either be from that rough characteristic or rough external characteristic, magiging smooth na siya kaya naga-travel man siya along the way, and then during its travel mura siya makamit og daghang mga obstacles which really shape its structure or its texture. So streams carry the largest proportion of clastic sediments, modifying them as they travel downslope. When rubble is carried by a stream or a few kilometers, it becomes rounded due to abrasion or friction. On the other hand, so kung lagyo daw na distance ang gina-travel sa isa ka sediments or sa isa ka rubble, then it will become rounded kasi nga makamit man siya abrasion or friction along the way. On the other hand, rubble tend to appear angular when they are carried at shorter distances. The amount and type of sediments a stream can carry depends on its capacity and competence. Stream capacity refers to the amount of sediments it can carry, while competence refers to the sizes of the sediments. The speed of a stream affects the size of the sediments it can carry. A fast-moving stream can carry large boulders, two large sediments, or two coarse sediments, while a slow-moving stream can only transport fine-grained sediments. Okay. Alright, so we have here, so since we are done with the clastic sedimentary rocks, let us proceed to non-clastic sedimentary rocks. So non-clastic sedimentary rocks can be biological, chemical, or a combination of both. So biological sedimentary rocks are lithified accumulation of dead organism. Kaya nga sinabi ko nung una that a fossil fuel can be classified as a sedimentary rock. So example of biological sedimentary rocks includes the coal, which are formed from carbon-rich plants, and limestone, which are formed from the remains of calcareous organisms. So example of calcareous organisms are the algae, corals, planktons. Yun. So those are the examples of calcareous organisms. So biological sedimentary rocks basically comes from living things or from the dead bodies of living things which decompose, and then the the what do you call this one, the bodies form or becomes part of a certain sedimentary rocks. The next one is the chemical sedimentary rock. From chemical sedimentary rocks form from chemical precipitation. An example is a rock salt, which are formed when dissolved salt precipitates from a solution. This occurs when there is a change in temperature or level of acidity of the solution. So kanang ginagamit nato na table salt, they are actually a form of chemical sedimentary rocks. I know, table salt man dito siya class, lahi man ang rock salt. So, an example of a chemical sedimentary rocks is a rock salt. Now, lahi si table salt ha. Table salt are the one that we use daily for cooking, or is one of the important ingredients in our kitchen. Kasi si rock salt, iba din yung kaniyang composition, and it is not fitted for human consumption. So rock salt, they are formed when there is a dissolved salt precipitate from a solution. Okay, so here is an example of a non-plastic sedimentary rocks. We have here calcite. So the texture of calcite can range from fine to coarse-grained crystalline, shells and cemented shell fragments, shell and shell fragments cemented with calcite cement, and microscopic shells and clay. So rock name, it could either be crystalline limestone, travertine, coccinia, fossiliferous limestone, especially if they came from shells and shells fragments that are cemented with calcite cement. And then yung nanggagaling sa microscopic shells and clay, they form chalk. And then it could also be a biochemical limestone. So quartz have a very fine crystalline, and then kung light colored siya, it is called as chert. Kung dark color naman, it is called as flint. So gypsum, the texture ranges from dine to coarse crystalline, and then it forms rock gypsum. For the halite, so its texture ranges from fine to coarse crystalline, and then it forms rock salt. Now for the altered plant fragments, so the texture ranges from fine-grained organic matter, and then one of the obvious example for this sedimentary rocks is a bituminous coal. So, mabilong siya sa biological sedimentary rocks. Okay, so here is how you can identify a certain sedimentary rock. So you can just read it and try to connect the diagrams from this point and this one up until here. Kasi yung end or kasi yung dead end, ito yung actual name ng isang sedimentary rock. So that ends our discussion for the sedimentary rock. So we have one more topic to go, which is all about metamorphic rocks.